of their import, right?
Yeah.
There was a certain way in which I began to understand very quickly that when things get tough, white women want me to acknowledge that I'm a woman only, and black men want me to acknowledge that I'm black only.
Mm-hmm.
Each group wants you to make a choice when things get tough, okay?
Yeah, yeah, sure.
So that became a really important question for me, and I started thinking, okay, when did white and black women come together truly
Mm-hmm.
and make some kind of political achievement together? Like,
Mm-hmm.
when was it really an interracial kind of thing? And I went to graduate school basically interested in that question. I also went to graduate school interested, though, in, okay, if black men get the vote in 1870,
Mm-hmm.
and their argument is, we're no longer chattel, we're no
Yeah.
longer slaves, give us our manhood rights. They
Mm-hmm.
get the vote in 1870. When they get the vote, white women are saying, how dare you
Right.
give the vote to that
Right.
ex-slave
Right.
before you give it to
Right.
your mother
Yeah.
and your sister and
Right.
your wife.
Right.
And
Sure.
so I was thinking, what in the world were black women saying at this time? Black men are not making their arguments based on an alliance with black women. White women are not making their arguments based on an alliance with black women. What were black women saying between 1870 and 1920 when women get the vote?
Yeah.
So that was the other kind of question that I had in my head going to grad school. So I put together this little proposal, and I'm thinking I know what I'm doing, and I signed up for an independent study to do this little proposal I put together, which
Yeah.
was basically to look at black and white women's writing during that same time period.
Okay.
That was kind of what I wanted to do. So I started out this independent study, but the advisor that I was working with had come across, this was by 1998, an anthology called Strange Fruit, which is plays on lynching by American women. The plays in there are by white women and black women.
Mm-hmm.
And she knew what my interests were, so she said, you need to be looking at these plays
Yeah.
because you're interested in this interracial movement. This might be a way for you to explore that. So that's how it started. Now,
Uh-huh.
what I found out very quickly is that black and white women did not.
Not so easy, right?
It was
Right,
not
right.
an interracial movement
Right,
in the way
right.
that I would think about an interracial movement.
Yeah.
But by then, I was already hooked on the plays, and so then
Yeah.
I was just trying to understand what's going on with these plays. So I very quickly shifted to black authored plays only.
And why is that time period? Like, why that time period? The time of, so it's after the enfranchisement of the vote for black males, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's 1890. So after Reconstruction, 1930. Before. So what's so interesting about that time period?
Yeah,
right?
that's an excellent question because, okay, here's the thing. Black men get the vote in 1870.
Yeah.
It's by 1890 that lynching really skyrockets.
Okay.
And one of the things that happens is that lynching is very much
Right.
about keeping you from voting. This is what's been erased in the
Yeah,
historical record.
let's talk about that because the last word of the subheading of your book is citizenship, right? Which
Yes.
is sort of a strange word in that title. It's an intriguing word, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because you've got performance, you've got drama, you've got the plays, and then you have this citizenship word.
Oh yeah.
And now we're talking about voting.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
And we're talking about. So go ahead with that. So why is that citizenship word in there? And I
Yeah.
think okay, go ahead.
So this is linked, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's really about keeping black men from voting, that you have the emergence of a black rapist myth. Once you start saying that black men are raping white women, then there's no way to say that they should be in the public sphere. So it's a way of making sure that you have a way of killing them with impunity and making sure that they're terrorized into not using their vote. So it's crucial, right, that it's not until after black men get the vote that this starts to happen. So it's really
Because
about
black
voting.
men now are a threat
Exactly.
to
So
a way of life and a way of thinking.
well, okay, so Reconstruction, right, comes along and it's going okay. People are making real strides to have black equal access to citizenship.
Okay.
It comes crashing down by 1876, and that then begins by 1877. Historians start calling it the post-Reconstruction era. So what's
Okay.
crucial about, understanding that little window of Reconstruction is that that is really a time period in which the nation is trying to make good on its promise that yes, not only will we be a union, but we will actually treat ex-slaves as citizens,
Okay.
that they are truly free, and that we will do things that will ensure that they have the rights and privileges of citizenship. Reconstruction is a time of doing that. By 1877, it comes crashing down, and the federal troops leave the South, which of course is more symbolic, right? There weren't that many troops in the South anyway.
Right.
It's a symbolic gesture, though, of we're withdrawing our support from making sure that we protect you. The violence had already been escalating by the late 1860s. By 1868, you start seeing all of this violence going on. So by 1877, it's just like, okay, we're really not even going to try to protect you anymore. So anything that you would have thought we were going to do to make sure that you can enjoy these citizenship rights, we withdraw. Now think about how powerful that is in conjunction with a myth of rape. Okay, so that really emerges later, and it also comes in conjunction with photography. So the reason 1890 is such a crucial year for me is because it's in the 1890s that photography becomes an important part of how you do the cultural work of lynching. It's not simply that I terrorize you by killing that one person. I also terrorize you by having photographs of his mutilated body circulating in newspapers and as picture postcards. So once photography comes into it, it brings all kinds of things to it in terms of even entertainment value. Okay, part of how you know that you're a citizen is that you can be in the crowd being entertained by the lynching. You're not the subject of the lynching. That's an important message in terms of a modern America, right? That's going into this era of increased technological advancement and all of this modernization. And as that's happening, part of what's being solidified is who is a citizen in this modern nation.
So these plays, you study in your book, you study 10 plays, right? And these, talk a little bit about how they're one-act plays, right? Most of them are one-act plays. And why are they one-act plays? Like what's the transformation between the theater, right, which is important, how these plays become one-act and more intimate and so can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, that's huge. Thank you. So lynching plays, black-authored lynching plays that are not pro-lynching in their orientation, of course, because the first lynching plays are pro-lynching plays by like Thomas Dixon Jr. But when you start having black-authored lynching plays that are not trying to promote lynching, they're actually trying to, guard people against the threat to one's identity that lynching represents, right? Because, of course, part of what's important about the reason why I call these lynching plays rather than anti-lynching plays, right, is that I'm trying to have us remember that it's not just protesting the lynching, it's also trying to preserve something about who you really were and why the lynching happened. Very often the lynching happened because that was a successful, businessman, and they wanted to run him off his land. So I see the lynching plays as doing affirming work. So that's why I try not to call them anti-lynching plays. But anyway, so by the time you have these plays that are not promoting lynching by black authors, the first one is Angelina Wellgrim-Key's play Rachel. It's a 3-act full-length play, and it's put on initially in March 1916 by the NAACP in Washington, D.C. And so it's designed to bring in an interracial audience. And she even says later, hey, I'm trying to convince white people that lynching is not such a cool thing to do because even upstanding blacks are vulnerable to it. So if I can use this play to show, white women especially, that the lynching that their fathers and husbands do is really detrimental to me as a black mother, then maybe we can do something about this. So this was her hope for an interracial kind of bond with white women that would help. So that 3-act play is put on in Washington, D.C., sponsored by the NAACP, and it does draw an interracial audience. Probably not as many white people as Grimke would have liked, but enough that the statement was made, and there was a lot of actually debate after that. That I argue in the book really led to this move toward not trying to draw an interracial audience and just putting it in Opportunity magazine, Crisis magazine, the periodicals that really were progressive in their politics. And, they weren't read by blacks exclusively, but they were certainly magazines that blacks are all over the archives saying, yeah, this is something that we read aloud at home together, and this is something we read at church, and this is something we read in the barbershop.
What was the debate? The debate that what was that?
Okay.
I don't mean to sidetrack you too much.
That's fine. The part of the okay, so what happens in Rachel basically is that you have this perfect, young 16-year-old girl in the course of the play, she ends up being, at the end, 18 or 19. So it covers a wide part of her life. And basically what's important about Rachel is that the only thing she ever wants to do in life is be a mother. It's the best thing in the world. It's the thing she's most equipped to do. And she feels that she's heard from God that that is what she's intended to do, is to become a mother. By the end of the play, when she's had different experiences with other people's experiences of racism, she rejects the proposal of her suitor, who, by all accounts, it looks like she's in love with him, he's in love with her. She rejects his proposal because she doesn't want to bring more children into the world who can be lynched. And she doesn't want to bring children into the world who can experience what the children that she's helping to take care of in the neighborhood, what they're experiencing at school and so on. She doesn't want to bring more children into this kind of world.
Yeah.
So some people felt this is race suicide. That was the term people would use who were upset with this. They would say, well, if our best and brightest, middle class, upstanding black citizens aren't willing to have children, then we're in trouble. And so some people were not okay with that. And that's when she came back and said, it wasn't about a message to blacks, it was about a message to whites. That look at the pain you're causing to mothers and potential mothers. So that was one of the sources of controversy.
Okay. All right. Thank
Yeah.
you. So, okay, so that's the 3-act play.
That's the 3-act play.
Okay.
So because she's tailoring it toward a white audience, it changes how she's making her argument, right?
Sure.
So it seems to me that what we find when we shift to the 1-act is that those people are trying to make a different kind of intervention. And that is why I say they're trying to affirm black communities. They're not trying to argue to whites, hey, this is why lynching isn't so good. They're trying to cater to black audiences and affirm them. So for example, they're interested in making sure that we know that the reason the lynching happened is because this was an upstanding father who wanted to demand the right price for his crop, for example.
Sure.
That's why the lynching happened. It didn't happen because he was a criminal. It didn't happen so it was a way of recording, okay, when blacks have a certain amount of success and whites want to put them back in their place, that's when lynching happens. So it's preserving that kind of truth for the community. Because if all they have is what the mainstream says, then how can you possibly think of yourself as a citizen? You have to be able to see yourself as you see yourself in order to continue to believe that, okay, despite all the messages that the country has given me, I do have a right to full citizenship, right? Because not only can you be lynched, but then pictures of your mutilated body will circulate in the newspaper and as picture postcards.
Sure.
The United States is telling you, you are not a citizen.
Yeah, that's right.
So how in the world did blacks get through that time period still believing in their right to full citizenship? I think that these plays are part of how they did it, because they affirmed each other. They told each other the truth. They recorded that truth.
And these were plays that were performed in very intimate settings, right? The home, the church, the barbershop.
Absolutely, I believe so. And of course, that part of what that means is that I can't, show you playbills. I can't show you box office receipts, that kind of thing, right? So the book is really interested in thinking about innovative ways to document the power